Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Saturday, August the 19th, 2023. A couple of days ago I talked about Julian Assange, who is in England at grave danger of being extradited to the United States because of his involvement with WikiLeaks, and clearly the United States is upset about his activity, even though it was quite a long time ago. I mean, I think that the United States has sort of a high opinion of its own moral integrity, and so, WikiLeaks was suggesting that the United States, for example, was involved in atrocities in the Iraq War, and it's very difficult for a country like the United States to claim the moral high ground. For example, when criticizing the Russians in Ukraine, when it itself has a fairly dreadful record, and so perhaps the United States feels it really has to get Julian Assange. And today I wanted to look at some other people who have felt the need to reveal what the US government has been doing. In particular, Edward Snowden, who went to Russia, and Chelsea Manning, who I think spent 7 years in prison because of her leaking of information. So that's what I want to look at. I also want to look at the horoscope of the United States, and I want to compare the horoscope of the United States with these three people. See how America occurs to them. What made them do what they did. So that's going to be something I'm going to be looking at. But first, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Saturday, August the 19th, 2023. Today, I don't know, today is not particularly interesting, I would have said. Astrologically, not a lot going on. Let me show you what I mean, why I think there isn't much going on. By the way, that's Edward Snowden on the top right, who I will be talking about shortly. So the moon has moved into Libra. It moves into Libra London time at 0:53 p.m. So in other words, just before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, around lunchtime. If you're in New York, the movement happens earlier, 7:53 a.m. If you're in the Pacific Northwest, much earlier than that. It's going to be like 4:53 a.m. So certainly if you're in the Americas, the moon is in Libra pretty much all day. If you're in London, Western Europe, the moon will be in Libra through the early, late afternoon, and obviously in the evening. So it really does depend where you are. But I think we can say that, there is going to be a Libran influence. And really, that is the main thing to be said about today. Moon is going into Libra. It has been in Virgo, now moves into Libra. Virgo can be a very critical sign, can be nitpicking, concerned about details, that sort of behavior. And when moon in Virgo moves to Libra, it does lighten things. We're not so concerned about detail. We're more concerned about perhaps social niceties, making sure we respond to people in the right way. So there is certainly a change of emphasis when the moon moves into Libra, and I think on balance it should be quite favourable. But I'm not saying that Moon in Libra is going to be dramatic. For most of us, I think we'll probably hardly notice it. So I haven't really said much about today's astrology. I kind of want to keep it brief because really that's the main thing. Just the moon is going into Libra. So I don't think I need to really go over the top about that. Okay, you could say that the moon, as it goes into Libra, it does make an 135-degree aspect to Jupiter. So Jupiter's at 15 Taurus. So early in the day, Moon is making a sesquiquadrate to Jupiter. So, for some of us, there might be a sense of exaggerated feelings, perhaps. That's one way of looking at it. Moon, Jupiter, trying to express ourselves a bit too much, and it might just seem a bit too over the top. So, we should probably avoid that. Anything else going on? No, I mean that's really it. I mean, before the moon goes into Libra, it does make an opposition to Neptune. I think in the Americas, you're not really going to feel the opposition to Neptune. But if you're in Europe, Asia, yeah, I think you're going to feel the fact that the moon is opposition Neptune. And, there could be a certain amount of emotionality in the air. But, emotionality that's possibly not too helpful. We might just get the wrong impressions, reach the wrong conclusions. So I think we have to be careful there. So let's look at what's going on in terms of each of the 12 signs. So as always, I look at the 12 signs, and I'm going to talk about now what is happening today to those signs. And I must emphasize that I'm going to talk about each of the 12 signs one after the other. So make sure, if you don't want to hear about all 12, you just want to hear about your star sign, use the chapters at the bottom of this video so that you don't have to read through, so you don't have to watch everything concerning the 12 signs, because really listening to what's happening to someone else's star sign, it's a bit boring, isn't it? I would have thought. So listen to what you need to listen to, but I won't be offended if you want to skip stuff. Okay, so let's go. My forecast for the 12 signs, and it is Saturday, August the 19th, 2023. Aries, it's a time when you can let someone else take the strain, and you certainly don't have to be carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. In the process, you might have to compromise, and you might have to spend some time listening, but I don't think you'll mind. Taking responsibility, though, can be hard work. Taurus. The day starts on a confusing note, but quite quickly the situation starts to stabilise. You can see what needs to be done, and the underlying details will become very clear to you. From a health perspective, everything needs to be in balance, and you should make a special effort not to eat and exercise too much or too little. Gemini. Sometimes you ask too many questions, because the act of questioning, it seems important to you. You almost feel as a Gemini sometimes that you are put on this earth to ask lots of questions. The trouble is that too much questioning can strip the power and magic from any situation, however promising. And today you should perhaps accept things as they are and see where they take you. You might then be surprised how good you are at something. Yes, you've got a real talent, and today might be a good day for discovering this talent. Cancer. It's a time for Cancerians to take a breather. You don't have to be in the spotlight, and from a health perspective, you need time to relax and recuperate. So ideally, you'll have a lazy Saturday doing things your own way at your own pace. Still, you might have some ideas about decoration and domestic harmony. You probably know what you're doing. Leo, there is some unfinished business that needs to be resolved. It won't take long, but it might nonetheless be a pain. Just reach out to the people who need to be reached out to, and then get on with your day. Also, the sun hasn't got much longer in Leo, so I hope you're able to make the most of everything on offer before the sun changes sign. Virgo, at the beginning of the day, there could be some confusion. It will be difficult to know what other people are thinking, and you might jump to conclusions, when really it's best to have an open mind. As the day progresses, you feel more in control, and you might find that there are material and financial issues that only you can deal with. Libra, the moon is moving into your star sign. You feel a sense of oneness with your environment, and if there are unexpected changes, you'll know how to adapt. At the same time, you're going to be popular, so if you attend parties, you are very likely to have a good time. You'll be helped by your ability to put other people at their ease. Scorpio, you can watch things from afar and not get directly involved. You'll learn a lot, and at the same time, you'll be protected from unexpected complications. From an emotional perspective, you'll enjoy your own company, and in particular, it will be nice that other people aren't dumping their problems on you. Sagittarius, you understand that the world is fragile, that it doesn't take much to upset the apple cart, so perhaps you should refrain from saying the first thing that comes into your head, especially if you are with people who you don't know very well. But maybe you want to cause trouble. That's really what you want to do. In which case, you have to ask yourself what you are trying to achieve and whether it's actually worth it. Capricorn, probably not a very exciting day, but you can focus on your own material and something that is unique to you. But that doesn't mean you have to be a hermit. You can project your personality very well, and you'll give the impression of being both likable and trustworthy. This means that it's a good day for focusing on career and business. Aquarius, it is easy to be a doubter, not looking beyond the facts, refusing to take a wider view, and being a Saturn-ruled Aquarian, you've got a skeptical streak, but today you need to make a special effort to see the wider picture, and don't be afraid of admitting your mistakes. A bit of humility will help you to make new friends. Pisces, when dealing with other people, you can't just focus on the things you love or hate about them. You have to consider the entirety of who they are and then make a judgment call. And at the moment, it is the emotional side of things that is taking precedence. Feelings come before sight and sound. So what I'm going to do now is move to the I Ching. And as always, I threw 3 coins in the air. And so I was asking the question, what is Saturday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? And the first hexagram I got, not great, hexagram number 39, obstruction. So today we might find that we just can't really get things done. It's just going to be really hard work. Everything we try to do, we seem to get stopped. So, it might be tempting to just give up, maybe we've just got the wrong time, or maybe we're not focused enough, or maybe we're just focusing on an area that just isn't for us. So the recommendation with this situation, 39 obstruction, is to perhaps look at the situation again. Okay, it is difficult to get things done. Particularly, if we're in a joint project, other people are involved, it's going to be hard work. Could even be impossible. So what are we supposed to do? Well, the I Ching says that, when you're dealing with an obstruction like this, and you've got this top line moving, you might have to stick your neck out above the parapet. You might have to actually do something to clear this obstruction, and it will almost be a bit like a sacrifice. It may be very difficult doing this, and you may have to go out of your way, but it does seem to me to be the right thing to do. So, if you've got an issue that you just can't deal with, it feels like everything is obstructed, then it's down to you to sort the problem out. And in the process, you might have to, I won't say martyr yourself, but you might have to risk, losing things. Perhaps there'll be a financial cost or something like that. But yes, this obstruction has to be dealt with. And then, if we do make this sacrifice, and it needn't actually be a very big sacrifice, but just making sure that we take responsibility for removing this obstacle. If we can do that, then the hexagram changes from 39 to 53, development. And this is talking about gradual progress. So, as we make the effort to remove the obstruction, it's going to be hard work. It may feel that we're wasting our time, but sooner or later we're going to start to realize that things are actually happening. So it is a long-term process, development, because it is gradual. But gradually we can change the situation into our favor. And, by the end of the day, things could be very different. And if we've really focused on changing things, on gradual development, we could be in a very good position. So now I want to look at some charts with particular emphasis on the USA and how the USA is seen by Julian Assange, by Edward Snowden, and by Chelsea Manning. What is their relationship with the United States? Okay, so right. So the first chart I want to look at is the chart of Julian Assange. Now, what I did notice about Julian Assange, which I didn't notice before, is he's born on July the 3rd. July the 3rd, in other words, he was born the day before Independence Day. So if you're born really close to Independence Day, it may mean that you have a special connection with the United States, for better or for worse. So that might be that might be why he's being pulled in America's direction. And the WikiLeaks was specifically focusing on what was actually going on in places like Iraq. We're seeing it was supposed to be a military mission to make lives better, but it seems that in many cases America's intervention in Iraq was making life a lot worse and not helped by American atrocities. So one thing I there are a couple of things I didn't mention about Julian Assange's chart, but I was particularly interested in his Mercury. So if you look at Julian Assange's chart, he has got his Sun Moon midpoint is at around seven Virgo. So his Mercury is semi-square his Sun Moon midpoint. And so in astrology, when you see a planet aspecting the Sun Moon midpoint by conjunction, square, opposition, semi-square, sesquiquadrate, wouldn't worry too much about the trines and sextiles. So if you see that, the Sun Moon midpoint is really about who we are. It's a balance between the masculine and feminine. And if you've got the Mercury aspecting the Sun Moon midpoint, you are really a very Mercury kind of person. You are the kind of person that really needs to communicate. You can't just shut up and retreat into the shadows. No, Mercury is very strong there. And also he has Mercury on the Venus-Mars midpoint. Venus-Mars is about charisma, it's about sexuality. It seems that with Mercury on the Venus-Mars midpoint, when he wants to, he can communicate, I would have said very seductively, and he can he's someone who can get what he wants through the power of his words. Now, as far as Julian Assange's relationship to the United States is concerned, there are a couple of things. Now, this is Mercury. He's got Mercury at 24 Cancer. So, remember, there's that Mercury, Sun Moon on the Sun Moon midpoint, on the Venus-Mars midpoint. So here are the two charts. So we've got Julian Assange in the middle, and we've got America, the United States, on the outside. And you'll see that Julian Assange has his Mercury at 24/4 Cancer, and America's Mercury is at 24/12 Cancer. So America and Julian Assange have their Mercury in exactly the same position. So I'm wondering how that actually works. Well, I suppose WikiLeaks, to a great extent, came from the United States. The things they were, it was stuff the Americans were keeping secret, and so with him having Mercury conjunct America's Mercury, that may just give him the ability to just get information out of the United States really easily, through his charms, through his computer skills. It's like sort of there's an open connection, and it's not even encrypted or secure, between Assange and the United States. A connection. I won't say spiritual, but they just connect. Of course, America doesn't like connecting with Julian Assange. Doesn't want Julian Assange to take all its stuff, and that's, of course, one of the reasons, perhaps, why America wants to extradite him, or wants Britain to extradite him back to America, where he can stand trial and potentially spend the rest of his life. Potentially spend the rest of his life in prison. So that's an aspect of Assange's chart. I wanted just to make a point about the United States before I look at Snowden and Manning. I just wanted to make a couple of points about the United States' chart. I've talked about this chart at great length, and I'm kind of sort of building onto my realizations and understanding of this chart. I set a sort of mission for myself to completely understand everything in America's chart. I thought that this was a worthy aim, and as I've said before, I think I think America's Jupiter in Cancer is tremendously important. I think Jupiter is very strongly placed in Cancer, and Jupiter in Cancer is a planet that is quite moral. It has a view about the way things should be. It's a bit preachy, really, and I think it's a problem, even though it's exalted in Cancer. Because America believes it knows best. And that's why America has been so into regime change for so long. America really seems to like, if it comes across a government it doesn't like, its first impulse is to change the government. That's what it wants to do. And in the process, a lot of people get killed. That's a pattern of what America has been doing. So that's part of what America is. Now, 5:10 p.m. is supposedly when America came into being, when it declared its independence. Of course, there's some argument about this, but I think if you look at some of the charts for events, for big events in America's history, I think we do get a feel that time is right. So let's take a big event. Okay, let's think about Hawaii. People. I wrote something. I did a video recently about the fires in Hawaii, and when we think about disasters in Hawaii affecting the United States, of course, then we start thinking about Pearl Harbor. And certainly one commenter was suggesting that I try to compare Pearl Harbor and the fires in Hawaii. I'm not convinced that in itself is worth doing. But I think it is useful to look at the chart of Pearl Harbor to get some sort of understanding about whether or not that this time of birth, 5:10 p.m., has any chance of being correct. So let's do I'm going to put USA in the middle, the time of the Pearl Harbor attack on the outside of the chart. So you can see that this really makes sense. So outer ring planets at the time of Pearl Harbor, and inner ring is the United States. And you can see that at the time of Pearl Harbor, there was a fairly close Sun-Jupiter opposition. So the Sun and Jupiter were coming together. Sun-Jupiter oppositions can be really major. It's like Jupiter is hitting the Earth. It's sort of releasing something. Now, this is because a Sun-Jupiter opposition, if you have a heliocentric map of the solar system, and you look at things from a point of view of the sun, a Sun-Jupiter opposition is actually the same as an Earth-Jupiter conjunction. So if you're on the Sun and you see Earth and Jupiter being conjunct, then that is the same as, from the Earth's perspective, as the Sun and Jupiter being opposition. And so when you have an Earth-Jupiter, heliocentric Earth-Jupiter conjunction, again, the same as a Sun-Jupiter opposition, very often some quite sort of major things can happen. So yeah, that's certainly something to consider. I think I'd probably better show you what I mean there, just while I'm talking about Earth-Jupiter conjunctions and that kind of thing. So if we look at the Pearl, there's a Pearl Harbor chart, December the 7th, 1941. There's the Sun-Jupiter opposition. But what if we change that chart to put the Earth in the middle. To put the Sun in the middle. You know, a lot of people think astrologers just really don't know what they're talking about. You know, we're talking about geocentric, Earth-centered positions of the planets. You know, that doesn't sound good. You know, we should be looking at the positions of the planets from a perspective of the Sun. And astrologers, a lot of astrologers who are actually involved in making predictions about the stock market use heliocentric as well as geocentric aspects. So looking at the geocentric situation, the heliocentric chart, let me just quickly show you that chart in a completely different way. That is the heliocentric position of the planets for Pearl Harbor. And the Earth is represented by that little circle with the cross. And so you can see at the time of Pearl Harbor, there was your Earth-Jupiter conjunction. You also had a heliocentric Mars-Saturn conjunction, heliocentric Saturn-Uranus conjunction. So from a heliocentric perspective, actually Pearl Harbor fits really well. Notice that Pearl Harbor, Mercury opposition Mars. That's, I suppose, a devastatingly aggressive piece of news, which led to America, the United States, going to war with Japan. I think it was America declared war on Japan. I think it went that way. I don't think Japan declared war on America. I think the United States responded to Pearl Harbor by declaring war. So anyway, that's a heliocentric chart. I thought I'd just show you that. I know I'm in complete ramble mode right now, so my apologies. So the key thing from a geocentric perspective, let me go back to the geocentric chart, is the key thing about that is that it does hit this Sun-Jupiter opposition is right on the USA's ascendant-descendant line. You know, and the USA has got a Mars-Uranus conjunction, a wide Mars-Uranus conjunction, but it's on the descendant. And so with the Pearl Harbor Sun-Jupiter opposition hitting the USA's ascendant, you can really see the issue here. So there's Mars-Uranus, just as a reminder. You've got Mercury as well. So you've got Mercury, Sun, Jupiter hitting the ascendant and hitting Mars-Uranus. And I think that really does tell us that that ascendant, that 5-10, that sort of early mid Sagittarius ascendant for the United States is almost certainly correct. Another big event for the United States was, of course, 9/11. So we can do the same thing with 9/11. So 9/11, there was a Saturn-Pluto opposition at the time of 9/11, and if we put this, if we show this on USA 9/11, USA in the middle, you can see that Pluto was exactly on the ascendant for the United States when the planes hit the twin towers, and you can see that Saturn was opposition the ascendant. So yeah, more evidence that the USA had to have been born around 5:10 p.m. Yeah, you can see that Saturn was in fact also exactly on the United States' Mars-Uranus midpoint at the time of 9/11. This Mars-Uranus is terribly important. In a couple of days' time, I'm going to be looking at a number of charts which really show that this Mars-Uranus thing comes up again and again and again. It's a number of charts connected with the United States, and I'll be looking at that in a few days' time. So Saturn on the Mars-Uranus midpoint. Mars-Uranus is about the explosions. Saturn hits America, so that does really work. So this ascendant 12 Sagittarius for 12 Sagittarius is actually the opposite of Edward Snowden's ascendant. So here's Edward Snowden's chart. So Edward Snowden was born on June 21st, 1983, apparently at 4:42 a.m. So he was born very close to the summer solstice, and he has his ascendant at 12:15 Gemini. So he has had an impact on America. America must have bothered him. Now, as I think with Snowden, he worked with the CIA. He worked in high security areas. He knew a great deal, and as he worked for government, he became increasingly concerned. He became concerned about the concept of the surveillance state that America was becoming. He became concerned that America was using government resources to spy on, for industrial espionage, for example, to spy on European companies for the benefit of America. And I suppose that just reminds us that America kind of sees itself as at odds with the rest of the world. And of course, we mustn't forget that the United States, in the end, it really messed Germany up by blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Of course, he'd gone by then. He was in Russia by then, but it was kind of the tip of the iceberg. And so surveillance concerned him. And I suppose, he's a Gemini, and Mercury rising. You can see apparently he is really brilliant with computers. Mercury in Gemini rising. But that Mercury seems to have clashed with how he perceived the United States. We can then go and compare his chart with the United States chart. So if we put Edward Snowden in the middle, we'll put USA up here. So what is the USA doing to Edward Snowden? I mean, this is a question, by the way, we should all be thinking about. Where do we want to live? All of us want to know, where do we want to live? It's a question that I hear people ask this question all the time. Where is the best place to live? And maybe we should consider how our chart and the chart of the countries we might want to live in, how they compare with each other. And you can see that America's Uranus was conjunct Snowden's Mercury. So what this might mean, that when Snowden started working for the CIA and the government, that might be just plain shock. He might have been completely shocked by what he saw. and this shock may have spurred him into action. So that may be how it worked. So that's those are some thoughts about Snowden's chart. I think it is just interesting the way his ascendant and America's ascendant are the reverse. Now, one planet in Edward Snowden's chart which doesn't seem to chime with the rest of the chart, which is his moon. He's got moon in Scorpio, and okay, a lot of people have moon in Scorpio. For example, Julian Assange has moon in Scorpio. In his case, that something he found to be deeply troubling. I think, and that's probably part of the stimulus for WikiLeaks. I mean, moon in Scorpio can work in many different ways, and moon in Scorpio has a bad reputation because it is in astrology, because it's because it's the moon is exalted in Taurus, yet that means by definition it's fallen in Scorpio, so it doesn't really work too well. But moon in Scorpio is quite hidden. It's emotional, and it has strong feelings, strong negative feelings, strong positive feelings sometimes, but very often negative feelings. So Julian Assange working away, secrecy is quite important for moon in Scorpio, and becoming passionate. Moon in Scorpio is going to be very passionate and becoming passionate about what he is doing. That's maybe how the moon in Scorpio works. Now, in the case of Edward Snowden, who has the moon in Scorpio, maybe he was disgusted by what he saw working for the government. Maybe it created a powerful emotional response. In Snowden's chart, the moon in Scorpio is his only planet in a water sign, and it's perhaps kept quite hidden. He had to. I suppose he slowly developed the idea that he was going to become a whistleblower, and maybe it was quite a sort of a secretive thing with this moon in Scorpio. And there is another person who has moon in Scorpio, and that is Chelsea Manning. So Chelsea Manning was the soldier who got access to a lot of information and started to I think, if I got this right, I think Chelsea Manning, she cooperated with WikiLeaks and started to, she got hold of classified information and then sent it out. This was not espionage. She felt it was necessary to do this, and she had moon in Scorpio. In fact, she had moon conjunct Mars in Scorpio. Mars is on the Aries point. In other words, Mars is 135 degrees from 0 degrees Aries. So that's her working away in secret. So it's interesting that those all three people have moon in Scorpio. I think that suggests to me that moon in Scorpio is just really concerned, or at least when it works at its best. Yes, it's secretive, but it wants to perhaps correct a wrong. I mean, Scorpios in general, not just a moon in Scorpio, can be really into justice. When they see something not right, they want to fix it. That's going to be issue there. Now, I suppose one thing I should say, again, I'm in full ramble mode. So Chelsea Manning was originally a man, and was originally a man, and she transitioned to being a woman. So what does that say about her planets? Now, if you've been listening to my sort of interpretations and so forth, I've always said that the sun is a male planet. If you are a man, your sun is it's you, and like, because it's a male planet. Mars, it's your planet. It's your, so you're going to keep these planets by and large. The female planets, Moon, Venus in a male chart, are likely to be projected. It's going to be how you perceive how you perceive the opposite sex, what you perhaps desire and want from the opposite sex. So, in the case of Chelsea Manning, where does that leave his Mars in Scorpio? Now, if he's a man, or he was a man, then Mars and Scorpio is him. But perhaps if he's transitioning to being a woman, and that is, I suppose, a meaningful event which really says something about her, then that Mars becomes projected, and that Moon, on the other hand, that will become her. That's non-projected. So if you see what I mean, there is an issue there with the astrology of transgender charts. Are these planets being projected, or are they being owned? I think I sort of touched on this when I looked at the horoscope of Dylan Mulvaney. She was the one who was involved in Bud Light, and Dylan Mulvaney had Venus exactly on the midheaven, and Venus on the midheaven. Well, it did seem to fit her quite well. She puts a lot of effort into how she looks. Anyway, I thought I'd just mention that. So with Chelsea Manning, you see all those planets in Sagittarius. Sun, Saturn, Mercury, Uranus. Sagittarius is perhaps the principle of freedom, wanting to be free, wanting to self-express. Yet Moon in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio is a very different energy, and in this case, the contradiction between Sagittarius and Scorpio for Chelsea Manning, because they're very different signs. It seems to be Sagittarius is the principle, and so in order to perhaps serve the interests of freedom, you have to work in a Scorpio way, meaning you have to surreptitiously take the files out and surreptitiously make sure they get passed on to somewhere where they can be put in the public domain. So I'm really sorry, that was a complete ramble. But I thought, as a couple of days ago I talked about Julian Assange, I thought I'd also talk about Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning, and also just relate these people to the United States chart. So that's all I'm going to say for today. I've gone on for far too long, and again, I really apologise about the rambling. That was bad, but anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow.